everyone. So we just had the first part of our live with Dr. Zainab. I had a feeling that it wasn't good, that an hour wasn't going to be enough after the last time we had a chat with her, because there's actually so much to discuss. We haven't even sort of dealt with everything, but this is basically so that at least parents who are having their babies come early and have had to have their babies in neonatal intensive care just have an idea, a vague idea of what exactly is going on and how they can contribute, because a lot of times that they feel very anxious about it and anxious and helpless, but there's a lot they can do, and also if they with the right knowledge. Yeah, so she's back. Dr. Zainab is back, which maybe we can improve outcomes, especially when they go home. So Dr. Mims is the author of the Yellow Book, fondly called the Yellow Book. It's actually called My Little Human's Personal Record. That's it over there, and it's available here in Lagos with us. We also deliver nationwide. There's something in the book that I'd like her to talk about. So when she gets on, we'll talk about it. That's the growth chart. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just wait a little bit for her. Please, if you have any questions, there's actually a little box at the bottom of the screen that has a question mark. Please put that in so that when your question is asked, I can tap on it and then everyone gets to see it. Thank you, Dr. Zainab, for coming back. And thank you for the information you've given us so far. So we're talking, we just finished talking about feeding and what Dr. Zainab was saying. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay. Dr. Zainab, I'm going to let you off and then I'll add you back again. Okay, she's left herself. Okay, and what Dr. Zainab was saying, because for even term babies, mothers always worry about underfeeding or not giving their babies enough food. So we want to know how to tell if a preterm baby, a preemie, is hungry and when they are satisfied. And what she explained to us is that because the information is a bit new about their own hunger cues and their satiety cues, and then that it may vary from baby to baby, that most times parents are just asked to put their babies on a schedule. So you're feeding your baby maybe every 2 hours or every, they give you a schedule for feeding your baby, as opposed to checking to see if there are any physical responses that the baby is giving, like how 10 babies will start, rooting or, putting their hands in their mouth when they're hungry or clenching their fist. And then at the end, when they're totally mad at you for wasting their time crying, So while I wait for her to come back, I'll just tell you a little bit about her book. It's called, it's a health record for babies. So usually when you leave the hospital, you're given a little book. Usually it's like maybe 2 pages or so here in Nigeria that has a place for recording your baby's weight and your baby's immunizations. But have your birth weight, your husband's name, your name, baby's and then each time baby comes for immunization, those entries are made in there. But then in other parts of the world, people are actually giving a little bit more information when they're leaving the hospital, because as a new parent, it's always a bit weird. Like, a few people are worried that about, because it's new. It's new. They need to know how to take care of their child, what to look out for, things like umbilical cord care, and worrying about umbilical cord care, worrying about how to take care of circumcision sites, worrying about immunizations. How do I deal with my baby if my baby has something like a fever after immunization or a rash after immunization. You know, those are the things that are discussed in the book. It's put in very, 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 very plain English, very, very plain English. And there's a space for, okay, let me just talk about it. There's a space for, just going to turn off the commenting. There's actually a space for the birth weight. There's a space for test results, your baby's genotype, you know, recording your baby's milestones. And milestones are basically the things, the achievements. Let me just put that way: achievements your baby makes in development. Things that show, oh, the baby's nervous system has gotten to this stage, has matured to this stage, or the baby's muscular system has you know, developed to this stage. So those are what milestones are. So there's a space for vaccinations, you know, based on the Nigerian schedule, not like any imported book, not that is not it's made for Nigerian parents, yeah, made with Nigerian parents in mind. What to do after vaccinations, you know, when the child has a fever, you know, how to deal with swelling and lumps and things like that, you know. So it's quite good. It's quite good. And so we have it now here in Lagos. And it's available for order. Okay, she's here. Good. It's available to order. I'll just wait for her to come back. Oh, she declined. Okay. It's available to order. Let me just see if we can get her back, because we wanted to discuss the group chat in there. I wanted to discuss the group chat in there. How many minutes do we have left? About 7 minutes. Okay. Let me see. Okay, I'm just trying to add her again. Oh, fantastic! Your little human is causing wahala. I know. Okay, all right. So yeah. So I'm just going to, leading up to the little human's health record. I want you to please talk to us about growth, in the sense that how do we, I even find it a little bit confusing. How is the child's age calculated? Can you explain how the child's age is calculated now?
Okay, basically because you know they're born before their time, you don't expect them to attain certain milestones or certain parameters, you know, at the same time with the babies that are born term. Mm-hmm. So you don't expect that the baby that was born preterm will crawl at the same time that with the baby that was born term, mm-hmm. or get to the same height or the same weight at the same time. So what happens is, you know, because we have the growth chart for children, they now modified it to create another one for preterms called the Fenton, you know, growth chart.
Okay.
So the thing is, most times you have to do, you know, what we call the calculated, where did we escape me?
The estimated or
adjusted? No, adjusted. The adjusted age.
Yeah.
The adjusted age. So most times, for instance, let's say your child was born now, and then the child, let's say, gets to the first birthday. That's 12 months since the child was out, right?
Okay.
In the real sense of it, the child isn't 12 months. So what you do is you calculate, let's say the child was born 4 weeks before term. So you're going to take those 4 weeks out of the age of that child, the post-uterine age of that child. So let's say the child is 12 months now, but the child was born 4 weeks before term. You're not going to do 12 months minus those 4 weeks.
Okay.
So the child's real age will now be 11 months, okay? So you're going to look at that child's milestone achievement and growth parameters based on that age. That's the adjusted age for that child. Okay. So most times we do that until the child is 2 years. because you assume that by 2 years, everything evens out.
Okay.
At 2 years, we assume that all preterms would have caught up with their peers at 2 years. So most times before 2 years, we do the adjusted age, we calculate the age, the adjusted age, and then use the Fenton growth chart. Now, a lot of people, I'm sure, when they have growth chart, they become obsessive, like, oh, my child has to be at a certain, level on the growth chart. No, it doesn't work that way. The growth chart is just a guide, to show how steady your child's growth is, not how much, because a lot of factors come into play. Thank you. A lot of factors come into play, genetics and all that. You don't expect a mother that looks like. I remember I and my sister, we took our child for checkup, and then, she kept, they checked everything was fine, and she kept complaining to the doctor that, that her son wasn't putting on weight and that he eats a lot, and she's actually quite slim and tall. And what the doctor said was, he was like, you don't expect, a gazelle to give birth to an elephant. That a gazelle will give birth to a gazelle, right? So the truth is, some parents want their children to be chubby and all that. Meanwhile, when you see both parents, sometimes I'm weak because they say, my child is not putting. When you now see the mother, see the father, if you want, how do you want your child to be fat? Do you get? So a lot of factors come into play. So what is most important with the growth curve is how steady your child's growth is. So let's say your child is on, let's say, it comes in a number of centiles, right? So on the horizontal plane, that's your child's age, right? Then on the vertical plane, you have the weight and then the height. Now, early on in their lives, we measure the head circumference. Now, a lot of people wonder, why are we measuring the head circumference? Especially for the preterms. Because some of the complications they have, when you talk about that bleed that we talked about in the brain, it can lead to what we call hydrocephalus. When you see some children with their heads very, very big, that's because the fluid that is in the brain is not being drained at the same pace as it is, produced. So their heads begin to grow. And the other thing is, the size of the skull is a direct reflection of the growth of the brain. So if I'm measuring head circumference and then it's not growing, that means the brain of that child is not growing. That's why it's very, very important to measure the head circumference early on. Now, after a while, we stop with the head circumference. We just focus on the weight and then the height. And at that time, we're already measuring the body mass index. So we're using the height and the weight to calculate what is called the BMI, because that will categorize your child, whether the child is overweight or normal, weight or obese, and all that. So now, when you look at that, now the vertical, I said the height and the weight, and now you have the age of the child. So let's say, and most times, wellness checks you do at birth, sometimes some people do it earlier, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, like that. So let's say at birth now, if I look at it, when you have the weight of the child, so you have 0.0. So at the horizontal line, I look at 0.0. So I have an imaginary line going up. Then on the other plane, I look out for my child's weight. And I look at that point, then I go across it. So the point where these two lines meet, that's where I put my X or my dot. I do the same thing for the height. So now you look at all these lines you're seeing, they're called centiles because they're like percentages. Yes. So for the preterms, you have a different set. You have it in 3, 5, like 50 up to 97. But here for the term babies, you have 5, 10, 25, 50, 75, 9, like that. So basically what it means that if your child falls somewhere like on 50, so this growth chart was actually, they took statistics from term children that were breastfed, and they plotted their weights and ages according to how they were growing. So this is like from real, children. So what this just means is if you plot on the graph and your child is on the 50th centile, it only means that if you line up 100 children in that same age group, your child is going to be bigger than 50 of those children and then smaller than 50 of those children. Again, if your child is on the 75th centile, it only means that your child is going to be bigger than 75 of those children and then smaller than 25 of those children at the top. So now it's not important where your child falls on the graph, on the which centile. The most important thing is if my child starts up from 0.0 and my child is following the 50th centile, I would want my child to maintain that centile. Now, don't get me wrong, it's never this perfect, right? So the growth, sometimes you have like spikes where there's a growth spot, because there are moments in children's lives Yes, because they shoot, they grow. Dr. Ijoma shared an interesting video with me today, and then, I watched it, and it was quite interesting, and I learned, a lot of things about how children grow. We used to assume that they grow steadily, but then that study, although it wasn't, accepted, scientifically, but it showed that children have periods where they just grow rapidly, and then there are periods where it's just silent. So at that point, you might just see a spike in the curve of your child, and then there are periods where your child is ill, or when they refuse to eat, they're on like feeding strikes, or they become very picky at that point. You might not see a dip, not very steep, but then there might just be a dip in the curve. So at that point, you might just see the weight might come down a bit and then to pick up after that. But by and large, you see that there's a steady growth. Now, where we're worried is, let's say your child starts off on the 75th centile, the child is going. All of a sudden, the child drops to like the 10th. That's worrisome. That means the child has crossed more than 2 centiles all the way down. So that's worrisome. So it's not about, my neighbor's child is on the 75th centile and my child is on the 50th and I'm worried. No, you shouldn't be. What is most important is from the birth weight or the height at birth, the length at birth, your child is just going steadily. Is not going haphazardly. So even if there's a small dip or a small spike, but the child is going at a particular, So the most important thing is you have to use the right one. If a child is 10, use the normal one, the WHO standard, the World Health Organization. Even the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, advocates for this same graph. So the blue one is for the boys, and then the pink one is for the girls.
For the girls.
Because they actually grow differently. They have different growth spurts at different times. So you have to make sure you're using the appropriate one. If your child is preterm, you'd want to use the Fenton growth chart. So basically, the growth chart is very important because it makes you anticipate. If, especially like for the head circumference I talked about, if I'm seeing a child at a wellness clinic and all of a sudden I'm seeing the curve for the, this one is stagnant, I'm going to get worried, like, why isn't the head circumference increasing? Because we're always supposed to increase at a certain rate. We learned that in school, So I'll get worried, could there be some sort of abnormal fusion of the skulls, or if it's growing rapidly, is there a problem?
Or is there some sort of brain injury?
Exactly. And then the brain is... So that helps me pick. And then again, in terms of the weight, if the child is just growing, there's so many conditions that have to do with the endocrine. That endocrine is the organ, when we talk about hormones, So a lot of these conditions can cause a child to be obese, So if I'm seeing that, I'll begin to get worried that this child is growing at an alarming rate in terms of weight. Even in terms of height and weight, when you're talking about things like gigantism and all that, you begin to worry that, dwarfism, that this child isn't. So they're great pointers. And that's the same thing I try to do with the milestone aspect of the book. I'm sure Dr. Zainab, I've seen the milestone aspect because sometimes it gives you, like, if I expect my child to be rolling over at a certain age, and, it gets to a point that this child isn't even attempting, and I talked about red flags, you want to see a doctor because so many times, again, mothers like to talk to their neighbors, their friends, did your child, and no two children are the same. So I might ask mommy, this and say, what age do your son stand? She'll say, he sat at 4 months. And then I begin to panic when my son was a very late bloomer for everything. He didn't walk till like he was 15 months. He didn't sit early. His first tooth came out when he was like 8 months. And mine came out at 4 months, so my mom said. So it's never the same. Do you understand? So I think the milestone guide too helps you, but it's only a guideline. It's not very certain. Even when we learned it in school, it was only a guide. It doesn't mean that every child falls into. Some children don't even crawl. They go from sitting to walking, right? And that's fine. Yeah. As long as those signs are there that the muscles are okay. Because it's different if that child isn't crawling, but you can notice some sort of weakness, then it's something to look at early on, right? So these are the issues basically. But the growth chart, I think, is a must-have. And I think what we lack here in Nigeria is the wellness checks.
Yes.
Because it's something that is, very compulsory in other parts of the world. Once a child is born, the moment the child goes home. I remember when I got home, I think after we were in the hospital for about 5 days, when we got home, by the next day, the midwife was buzzing at the door that she was hit, and the house was a mess. And I know they look at things like where you live, is there anybody that smokes in the house, where your baby sits, are you bed sharing, and all that. So I remember the nurse came and I was already saying, oh God, can she come another day? And she was like, oh, you didn't come home with your baby. I was like, no, you said she. Then she was like, I have to come in, you know? So I think if we had that kind of thing, like mortality rate would be very low, because when they come in, they will check the weight. They come in with that Sacramed, weighing scale. They'll check the length. They'll tell you to position for breastfeeding. Let them see how well the child is feeding.
Yeah.
So I feel and then this is solely the midwives that do it. I have a lot of midwives in it, and I feel they're underutilized. Ideally, a pregnant woman shouldn't be seeing a doctor unless it's a special case or you have some sort of complication. These midwives come to the community. They check the mothers in your home, and they check the baby. They'll come back after a few days. Then it spans out. Then you now begin to go and see your health visitor. After like 6 weeks and everything. It's mandatory. If you don't show up, they'll look for you. So I feel if we had that here, like, it will save a lot of, like, so many things will be caught early, and a lot of things will be avoided, and mortality will definitely go down. Definitely. Yes. Yeah. So I'm really hoping that this is something that's really.
I think it's really good. I think what I think would work a lot, especially another reason why I really like this book is empowering parents to. I mean, if for whatever reason the government isn't ready to do what it's supposed to do or doesn't know what to do, we can drive the change from another end, by empowering people to maybe ask questions or know what to look out for and go to the hospital for.
Yeah.
So if you in the book that she actually explains, so don't be scared. She actually explains how to use the growth charts in the book. It's all very, very self-explanatory there, and then she has a chart for boys and girls. I remember when I had my first I think I got freaked out once because I went and checked some online growth calculator or something, and she was not falling within the normal limits, and it really freaked me out at first, before I decided to calm down.
It gets like, people assume that you should know because you're a doctor. Forget that I've been working with kids all my life. Like, I had a lot of questions when I had my own son, like things I knew, like everything just flew out of my head. And, I had a lot of questions, and it always helps to talk to somebody else. That's why I think it's by no accident they say you shouldn't treat relatives and all that. I'm talking about empowering mothers. I think that's like one of the major problems I had. I even have that with adults, You see an adult and then they tell you that, oh, I've started treating malaria. Okay, what drug are you taking? And doctor, is yellow, the pack is pink. I was like, my guy, like, there are 1,001 brands of anti-malaria in Nigeria alone. Like, just telling me it's pink doesn't mean that I should know off the top of my head. Now, it's more sad, like, when you see a mother and they tell you my child was admitted for 2 weeks. What was the child managed for? They don't know. My child was on certain medication. What was the name? Oh, it's one pink syrup. I was giving her twice a day. Like, I'm not a magician, I can't know. And I feel like it doesn't help. And that is why I was very particular about including that medication diary. And I do hope that mothers utilize it, because I feel it's part of your child's history, Every child, because I don't expect that in the span of a child's life, unless the child is, maybe has a chronic illness, I don't expect the child to have had so much medication in the span of their little life, So I expect that everything that goes into your child, you should write it down. And then I left a space for drug reactions. If they had some sort of drug reaction, it should be there. So imagine if a mother coming to the clinic with, this book. And I think like a lot of questions the doctor might have should be answered already in the book.
Yes.
Because now if you start asking me at what age, like off the top of my head, I can't remember so many things. So after this book was, after this book I brought, it was done, I had to pick my son's red book, and I was trying to, because that one didn't really align with a lot of things we do in Nigeria. Yeah, so I picked it, and then I was going to, and then I was smiling at some things because then I was trying to remember his milestones. And guess what? I had to start checking pictures. Like when he had his first tooth, I couldn't remember because I didn't write it down. So I had to check a picture when he had just one, and check the year and the month. So that it was about 8 months then. That's when I wrote it down. Then I had to check, so many things. But like now that I have it, so everything is just in one book. So I feel even if you don't have this book, I feel like mothers should find a notebook that doesn't have a name and just write it down and write everything down. You don't have to buy, this, but just empower yourself and write all these things down.
Yes. And it also answers things like hiccuping, dry, peeling skin, what the reason is for
You
sneezing.
won't believe a classmate of mine, he was when the same year, but he studied dentistry. And she sent me a message on Twitter. He was like, in Hausa, he was like, a mother of children, He was like, pleased that his daughter has been hiccuping, that should he be worried? He's a doctor, I forget he's a dentist. And guess how old
Yeah.
she is? 2 plus. And then I was like, okay, I asked him a few questions, like how often and all that. And then I just explained what hiccups was to him. So little things like, and I think what even informed that decision was, one time I was on call, it was 1 a.m. I had a child who was anemic. The PCV was like 10%. So we were rushing to try and transfuse and all that. Hi, Dr. Pepple. And, this mother comes in with the baby wrapped in the shower, 1 a.m. with her mother in tow. And then they were asking, she was confused. She was like that. Her child was doing something. And guess what? The child was having hiccups. And I felt that would have saved her the journey, and they came from somewhere far. But because she had the baby in that hospital, she insisted she must come to that hospital. And then I had to just talk to her that these are hiccups and this they're harmless and this is what causes them, and the thread on the head doesn't stop anything. So basically, I just tried to answer little questions I felt new mothers would have. I wouldn't necessitate them, rushing to the hospital.
Yeah. And then I think it's really good if, because you have this thing here about full physical examination, just to write it down. I mean, honestly, for my first, I think I had them write a medical report. By last year, I was looking at that medical report of what happened during my delivery. Honestly, if you asked me questions about, I would get a number of them wrong. And these were things that were key to the next pregnancy or the next child that would affect how that pregnancy was going to be managed and things like that.
You know what? It's just so strange you're saying this, because again, when I was transferring from the red book to the yellow book, I had to get his hospital notes that we had when we were discharged, and then the drama surrounding his delivery, it hits me all over again that, oh my goodness, he wouldn't have been here today if they didn't intervene. And then he was there. I even saw the head circumference and everything, and the fact that he had antibiotics. I knew he did, but I wasn't so sure about, I'd read it then, but now, I looked at it again, because we tend to forget, right?
Yes.
So you're right in saying that this thing helped, to remind us. So in the part where I wrote the physical examination, that's why I feel, with this book, it's good that the mothers have it, but I feel it has to be a collaboration with even the doctors. Yes. Because I feel if the mothers have it in their labor pack, so once they're born, I feel it starts from pediatrics. The pediatrician will fill in, the eye exam, the chest, everything. When I did my internship in Zaria, it was routine. It was mandatory that any child that had cesarean, there was a form we would fill. Some of them come out and they're fine, but then we'd fill hips. The hips are okay, because we have this congenital dislocation. Hips are okay, the eyes, because guess what? There was a child that was born with aniridia, there was no iris, and nobody knew. I know gone are the days where children are born, their eyes are closed for days. Now their eyes are wide open. But nobody had looked into the eyes of this child. It was our consultant that told us this story. Apparently it's something that ran in the family. Nobody had looked into the eyes of this child until I think they came, and the child was how many weeks old? And the consultant just wanted to, look out for and she just looked into, and then there was, nothing there. So this should actually be done at birth. You check, and like I mentioned, I wrote that time about the hearing test. My son had his hearing test in the hospital on the second day or so. There's a space for that, the hearing test and all that. So all these things are things that should be done in the hospital before the child leaves. So I feel if, it could be in the labor park, the doctors will agree, and, agree to fill it, and the nurses fill in the head circumference and all that. I feel it will really help, but then, change is a huge thing.
Yeah.
It seems like an uphill battle. But
then we should just, I think parents can be, you can be, smart about it. Just, you can ask in passing, so that let me not stress you, just tell me, I'll write it.
Yes. It can fly in the private hospitals. It can fly. I know it will fly. But in the government hospitals, the most they can do is ask, oh, can I take a picture, or can you write it down on a piece of paper and then I transfer it myself? But in the private hospitals, if they ask you to even find them, and they would. So it will fly. Yeah, it will fly in the private hospitals. I know it will. But we'll get there. And it's interesting to note that in the course of my research, I found out that I think later on, because in the beginning I didn't see it. Then I found out that there was a replica of the red bouquet in Nigeria.
Oh, wow.
It's green in color. Because I remember when I did this, when I showed my friend, she was like, oh, that you can name yours the green book since it's Nigeria. I was like, since it's not a government thing, let me just, name it the yellow book because it's more yellow than green. And I found out there was one. It was actually flagged by Mrs. Toyi Saraki.
Okay.
She, through her foundation, the Wellbeing, WBAF, something for Africa, she had flagged it. They started, tried distributing, and they started in Kwara and Lagos. And they're actually really doing well. They got statistics. But guess what? Trying to push it now to the federal level, it was truncated at a lot of steps. Now, the information I have that these books are there in storage, like a lot of copies in storage. And you need to see it. After this, I'll send you the link. So I spoke to her because we had managed, she has this foundation where, because she has twins, so when you have multiples and you can't afford anything, they come in and then they sponsor it. So I've met her before, though she might not know. So I actually reached out through her representative, and then we actually talked. We had a long chat, and she told me about the struggles, about, how her efforts were frustrated. But, well, I did my best to tell her that I feel it's something she shouldn't give up on. I showed her the e-copy of mine. She was so impressed. She was like, oh, this is going to be lovely to give mothers. That mine is a bit different because it's colorful and then I involved a lot of things. But theirs was more like the standard one because they collaborated with the UK, and then Japan and all that. Yeah. And they came together with that book. So imagine if every woman, because now my rancor is still that I have these books now. I'm not an NGO, do you get? They come at a cost. So I can't obviously give them for free. Now what I've done with my printer is we're trying to make a cheaper version of it. The same content and everything, but cheaper. Like it can't be this hardcover and all that. So that, wanting to reach out to all these people, because my pain is still that I'm here on Instagram, dishing out, information to mothers. There are women that don't have phones. There are women that don't have access to the internet. So I always feel like my mission is half-baked. So these books are there. Oh, yes, mothers are buying it. But there are women that don't even know it exists. They cannot even afford it, Even if it's 1,000 naira, they cannot afford it. So imagine that kind of book now. The government is in, in collaboration, and it gets to them. I believe, mortality would come down a lot. So it exists, though, just that because the government wasn't the initiator, politics, all these things. So, yeah.
Oh, well. Oh, well. No, but I think the first thing, you're the second person now. Someone else may do another one, or maybe someone will wake up one day and be appointed someone and be like, okay, we need to do this. Who has Comless partner? So I think I honestly, when I heard about, I was so excited about it, so excited, and I know. I'm really grateful for this. I want to say thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the support too. You've been awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, you did all the work.
Hi, Sandra. Awesome. It wasn't funny. And then my printer, he knew that whenever I called him, it was just come and print. I would have done the design and everything because I knew what I wanted. I wanted it to be colorful. I didn't want it to be true. I wanted it to be a keepsake because I knew what I wanted in one book for my child. So, Sandra, hi. So I knew, what I wanted. And, it's coming 2 years late because I thought of the idea when I had him and he's 2 years old. But then I knew something I wanted. And one day I just said, it was on my vision board, actually, at the beginning of the year. So I said, oh, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do this. So I just went to, putting things together. And then in the space of, I think, 2 months, because I have other things doing really. So I was done and I was so excited for it. And thank you for all the support.
Thank you. Okay, so about these beads, I don't know why. I was wondering why these dangerous things are being printed.
To be honest, right? Yeah. The application I used, because I wanted it to be as colorful as possible, right? Yeah. So initially, because I did a post on bath toys. I love bath toys and the dogs. So the design. Oh, thank you, Chief. So the design I got was this. So my idea was to use the background to be like bubbles, right? But then when I used the bubbles, it looked a little bland, because bubbles are almost white and transparent, and then it kind of blended with this. So then it was on just a template, and I just saw this, and I was like, oh, this is very colorful. But this is not to say that beads are safe for children. But then it was just very colorful, and then I liked it as, just the background, and then that was it. And then I just put in my logo, and then that was it.
I thought you I thought you did it because you wanted to like sort of warn parents. I mean, with
No,
the
not really.
oh, okay, okay, okay.
No, no, no. But that's a nice touch to it, really. But that wasn't the reason actually. But just because it was colorful and everybody knows I love colors, so that's I tried to make it as colorful as possible. Yeah.
Great, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone that joined. Chief, I see you. Thank you for Chief. We'll get there one day. We'll get to that UK standard. We'll get there someday. Hi,
Okay.
Sandra.
Okay.
Dr. Purple.
Right.
Hi.
So
Thank you all
thank
for
you,
joining.
everyone. I'm going to
Thank you.
save it so we can listen. People can listen and pick up some of the nuggets that you shared with us as well.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.